Hey guys, what's going on? So I read pretty much all the comments if I can. Sometimes it's just impossible, but I try to read as many comments as possible. And the majority of comments really come down to, well, you missed this point, or you missed this point, or this is what the left wing is actually saying, or this is what the right wing is actually saying, when I call out some inaccuracies in their thinking. So what I decided to do was say, hey, let me react to the reactions, right? So for instance, in this case, this is left wing commentator David Pacman, progressive left wing. You know, that's why his whole platform is blue. Then you see Sean Hannity with the red, white, and blue. He's actually interviewing Vivek. Some people call him Vivek. Some people call him Vivek. I'm calling him Vivek Ramaswamy, who's obviously one of the leading presidential candidates going into 2024. And they're talking specifically about Vivek's policy when it comes to Israel. So there seems to be some confusion on what his policy is, but David Pacman is reacting to Sean Hannity's interview, and I think it's a good opportunity to see what he's saying, how I feel about what he's saying, and how I feel about what Sean Hannity's saying. So we kind of get everything wrapped up into one little tight spear. So let's check it out.
We have learned by observing Vivek Ramaswamy, the 2024 Republican presidential candidate, that he has a penchant for saying one thing and then later when he's asked about it saying, I never said that. And then when it's quoted, he says the quote is out of context. And then when context is given, he says the context is wrong and it's being presented by left-wing media or whatever the case may be. The epitome of this took place last night. This is really something. I think you're going to enjoy this.
All right. So he set it up pretty nicely, right? Vivek will say something pretty standard, right? He'll say something. Then when it's thrown back in his face, he says, no, it was out of context. Then they show him saying it. Then he says, well, even though I said it, the context in which I said it. So that's what he's saying. He's saying they'll quote exactly what he's saying within the context, and Vivek weasels out of it, essentially, out of context. So let's see. And this is supposedly the prime example that he's giving. So let's check it out.
Vivek Ramaswamy appeared on Fox News with propagandist Sean Hannity. Now, Sean Hannity makes Vivek look quite bad. But the remarkable thing about this is that Hannity is doing this not in bad faith, but he's doing this cynically. Hannity wants to help Trump. Hannity is buddy-buddy with Trump.
Yes. So
everything I'm about to show you here is Sean Hannity trying to help Donald Trump. That all being said, Hannity...
Now, I disagree with this a little bit because I don't think Vivek is any threat to Trump. He just is not. He is not, right? He's Trump 2.0 or whatever, but he's no threat to Trump. So I don't think Sean Hannity's doing this to help Vivek or hurt Vivek, because Vivek is not a threat to Trump. He is not a threat to Trump. And I think anybody who's being honest with the conversation would say that. So let's see, because essentially he's saying Hannity's trying to destroy every particular candidate. And I don't think that's the case. I think if you're a threat to Trump, like maybe DeSantis, maybe, but Vivek is absolutely no threat. Matter of fact, Vivek is trying to be Trump, essentially.
Pretty astutely points out the erratic and contradictory nature of just about everything Vivek Ramaswamy says. First and foremost, here is Vivek Ramaswamy saying, once we get our semiconductors under control, then we bail on Taiwan. And Hannity goes, did you just say that? And Vivek goes, no, I didn't say it. And Hannity goes, you did. You just said it. Check this out.
So I'm the only presidential candidate in either party who has had the courage to say that I'm not going to embrace the one China policy, which is the posture of both political parties today. That I'm not going to just adopt strategic ambiguity. We can't afford that. We need to be clear that we will defend Taiwan. That's different from strategic ambiguity now. We have to defend Taiwan until we achieve semiconductor independence, at which point we resume our current posture of strategic ambiguity, which is exactly what the U.S. adopts today. So, Sean, it's worth reminding people that right now the U.S.'s position is a one-China policy.
All right. I'm going to say it. That was pretty confusing. So the policy now today is China goes into Taiwan. Do we defend them? I don't know, right? I don't know what is the policy today. If China was to invade Taiwan today, do we send troops in to fight the Chinese? I don't know. I don't know if that's the policy today. Right? What's stopping China from invading Taiwan? Just like what stopped Russia from invading Ukraine, right? I don't think it's going to be U.S. troops. So as of right now, from my perspective, and I could be wrong, the policy now is hope and pray China doesn't invade Taiwan. It's the hope and pray method, right? Vivek is saying, no, forget the hope and pray. We're going to defend them. We're going to say, no, you go in there. We're going to stop you. It's defend right now. Stop it all right now. And then after we get semiconductor independence, we go back to this. Well, we might defend, we may not defend, we may or we may not defend. But right now, we need to be clear. We're going to defend. And then after that, then we go back to the wishy-washy. Versus what we're doing now, which is who really knows? We may or may not. And it's up in the air. So it seems to me that his position is, which if you think about it, it's pretty clear. We're going to make sure they know we're going to defend now and to a certain point. And then after that, we'll leave it up to chance. But now we're going to take it out of that chance piece and make it very clear. So that's what it seems like his policy is. Let me know in the comment section if you disagree. That's what I'm thinking he's saying. That's his policy.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. At what point, for example, if Russia wanted to put nuclear weapons 90 miles south of our border in Cuba, we did have a Cuban Missile Crisis, what would your posture be there? In other words, if you're saying as long as Taiwan provides the semiconductor chips, we'll help them, but after that, they're on their own?
Well, again, I don't want to answer for Vivek because I think he's going to answer it himself. But I think his policy was, right now, you're not saying you're going to help men on right now anyway, right? Right now, the United States is not saying we're going to defend Taiwan. It's open. It's ambiguous, right? Vivek is saying, no, we're going to help them now. But when we get our semiconductor independence, we go back to doing what we're doing now. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's, to me, what he's saying. It's not, we're just going to leave them, after we get semiconductor independent, we're going to leave them alone. We're going to go back to what we're doing now, which is essentially nothing, right? It's ambiguous. Who really knows?
No, actually, Sean, and that's again how my position's been caricatured. I will remind you and everybody else that right now the United States.
I'm listening.
No, it's not what I'm saying because, well, I'll give it to you very simply. Right now, the United States' policy towards Taiwan is a one China policy. Donald Trump was derided. He was made fun of for daring to pick up a phone call from the Taiwanese president. The United States of America right now does not even recognize Taiwan as a nation. I view it differently. I am clear that we will defend Taiwan. I'm the only politician in either party that has
until we get our semiconductors under control.
In 2020.
All right. This is where maybe they're not listening. Maybe I'm hearing it wrong. But he's saying the policy now is China can go in and do whatever they want, right? We're not saying we're going to defend Taiwan. Who knows? It's ambiguous. He literally said it's ambiguous. But he's going to say it's not going to be ambiguous. I'm going to defend them. Then when we get semiconductor independence, then we go back to doing what we're doing right now. So he's taking a harder position and saying even after that, we'll go back to exactly the position that we're at now. I don't see how that's not better than what's currently going on. Because again, if China goes in there now, we're not saying we're going to defend Taiwan. Nobody's saying that. Just like when Russia went to Ukraine. We weren't saying we're going to defend Ukraine. And so, again, I'm trying to understand what David's point is and what Hannity's point is.
And then I would resume the current position of the United States after we've achieved semiconductor independence.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's basically what Hannity is saying. This is the thing we learned through my interview and others with Vivek.
Okay.
You can give him a quote out of a book he wrote, and he will somehow slip around it and say, well, but, the media and partisanship and misquoting and lack of context and whatever. Hannity confronted Vivek with another one saying, you said...
All right. So that last one, let me know if you guys just think I'm just totally off with that last one. But that last one, I don't see it. I think Vivek was right. He's like, I'm saying we're going to harden the policy now and just go back to what we're doing. I've explained it a whole bunch of times, but it is what it is.
Aid to Israel should end in 2028. And Vivek says, that's false. And Hannity goes, here's a quote. I've got the quote. When you are putting Hannity in this position, you're not making much sense.
Over some of the issues, though, you said aid to Israel, our number one ally, only democracy in the region, should end in 2028, and that they should be integrated with their neighbors. I have an exact quote. You want me to read it?
That's actually...
All right. So I actually have the quote. Let me let you hear the quote to see what he actually said. Here's a quote. Let's listen to it together.
I want to negotiate. I'm a deal maker. Okay. I want to negotiate now Abraham Accords 2.0. Get Saudi, Oman, Qatar, Indonesia in there. Get Israel on its own 2 feet. And I believe in standing by commitments that we've already made. So our commitments have, I think, $38 billion in aid, military support, et cetera, going in through 2028. I want to get Israel to the place where it is negotiated back into the infrastructure of the rest of the Middle East. We should not be worried about holding one nation or one region hostage over one particular question relating to Palestine. Go to Abraham Accords 2.0 That's good for Israel. It's good for the rest of the Middle East. It's good for us, such that come 2028, that additional aid won't be necessary in order to still have the kind of stability that we'd actually have in the Middle East by having Israel more integrated in with its partners.
Okay, so you heard the quote, right? Again, this is just my interpretation of what he's saying. We're giving them the money. We're going to keep giving them the money, right? But we now want a plan, so we don't have to just give them the money in perpetually forever. And that plan would be, let's see if we can get some more of those agreements like the Abraham Accords, so we don't have to now keep giving them $38 billion, right? If we can get them integrated with the rest of the crew over there and have these deals in place, then instead of giving them $38 billion, it can be something less, right? Because now we have a plan to not only keep helping Israel, but to lower our obligations to them, right? So we can start saving some cash. That seems reasonable. Now, it may not happen, right? It may not happen by 2028. You can have these deals signed and you're going to continue to fund them. But it's a plan to say, okay, let's just not keep throwing away $38 billion. Let's have a plan to see if we can reduce this number in a meaningful way, through negotiations and through something like the Abraham Accords 2.0. And the Abraham Accords is Israel signed treaties with a lot of the neighbors, about Israel's existence and all that stuff. So it worked out pretty well. It was a huge accomplishment for the Trump White House, which wasn't covered by the mainstream media. Abraham Accords was amazing. But Vivek is correct, I think, in saying, why don't we have a plan to make the situation better so we don't have to spend that money instead of just throwing the money away? So I didn't hear, let's defund them, right? Because the way it's coming, of course, let's defund Israel. I don't think he's saying that. I don't think he said it from these clips. So let's see how Vivek responds to it.
Yeah, I can tell you the exact quote. What I said is it would be a mark of success if we ever got to a point in our relationship with Israel, if Israel never needed the United States' aid. And Sean, you know how politics is played. A lot of the other professional politicians who have been threatened by my rise have used that statement to say that I would cut off aid to Israel.
All right. Now, whatever you think about aid to Israel, that's not what this is about. This is about the fact that Vivek Ramaswamy, with a straight face and very articulately, right? You got to give the guy credit for it. He will just straight up say, no, never said it. You've got the quotes. He doesn't care. He'll go on to something tangible.
But just to be clear, we heard the quotes, right? That quote that they're talking about, he didn't say he's just going to defund them at 2020. It didn't sound like that to me. It sounded like we want to see if we can get them in a position where we don't have to give them that much money. But, we're still going to give them the money if they need it at that point. That's what I got from it. But they seem to have switched it to say, oh, he said I'm going to cut off funding to Israel at 2028, which, again, it's like the Taiwan thing. It's like, I think they've heard what they wanted to hear and are saying what they want to say, but they're not saying what actually the ideas he's trying to convey, which I think it's pretty clear. But again, I'm an independent, so I think Sean Hannity and David Pakman, maybe I'm seeing it wrong. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong. So, please let me know in the comment section if I'm seeing this wrong.
Gentle. Hannity goes back and says, well, you said Israel shouldn't have preferential treatment. That's a quote. And he goes, well, those are direct quotes from the fake news media. But so are they direct quotes or not, Vivek?
Traveled to Israel. I have business partners in Israel. The reality is this. By the end of my first term, our relationship with Israel will be stronger than it ever has been because I will treat it as a true friendship, not just a transactional relationship.
And why did you say that they shouldn't have preferential treatment? Why did you say that Israel should not have preferential treatment from us? That's a direct quote.
Sean, I understand. No, those are direct quotes from headlines summarized by opposition research fed to the fake news media.
So are they direct quotes or not?
Yeah,
it's a very specific kind of direct quote.
The reality is, here's what I've said, is Abraham Accords 2.0 is my top priority. Abraham Accords 2.0 is my top priority.
But from the quote that we did have, it seems like he's saying one thing and they're interpreting it as something totally different, right? They're interpreting it as him saying he doesn't want to support Israel. He's going to pull out eventually. And that's not from the quote that I heard, from the quote that you guys heard, the quote that we're all talking about, it doesn't seem like he's saying that.
Which is to get Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar into that pact with Israel. And foremost, to have a partnership with Israel that does something really important for the U.S., which is to make sure that Iran never, ever, ever has nuclear capabilities. That's important to the United States.
Notice that he's moved on to something different here. And he really is very slick. You got to give the guy credit.
And the other thing I've said, Sean, is that Israel's our friend. Good friends learn from each other. I would love Israel's border policies in this country. I would love Israel's tough on crime policies and strong national identity in this country. I would love an Iron Dome like Israel has to defend itself against Hamas, which is a good thing for Israel. I want something like that here in the United States. So I don't read from the traditional GOP talk.
All right. So he just goes on to filibuster more. And then just one more clip here. In this one, Ramaswamy says, you know, our actions might be actually pushing Russia closer to China. And I have to tell you, Hannity rightly points out, no, but that's already something that is happening. It's not about our Ukraine policy.
Sean, there's also a deeper point, which is that I worry we are now driving Russia closer into China's arms. And the Russia-China alliance.
Just so we get some context on this. Russia has been cut off from the rest of the world, right? Through sanctions because of the Ukraine issue, right? So they've been cut off from the rest of the world. The only people who are willing to do business with them is China. Just like with North Korea, right? The world is cut off from North Korea. The only people who do business with North Korea is China. So if we are talking about whether the policies now are forcing Russia to get closer to China to survive, I think that's just a fact of reality, right? They're sanctioned to death from the West. Their trading partners are sanctioned to death. And now, as Vivek is coming to terms with, he's saying, this war in Ukraine is having the negative effect of pushing Russia closer to China because that's the only person who wants to who'll do business with them because everyone else wants to do business with the West, right? The only person who says, okay, I can still do it, because China's the only people who can do business still with the West and with Russia, and no one can do anything about it because we need China, right? The West needs China more than they need Russia. So that's seemingly what he's saying. So now let's see what the argument is.
Is the single greatest threat that we face, and that's what I really worry about.
It's
and
already
I think that
there.
if there's an
it's
opportunity,
Russia, China, and Iran.
Well,
a new
exactly.
axis of evil is formed. So the question is, I
want to weaken it. And I want to weaken
it too. And I'd love to see that happen.
Yes. Yeah, and Vivek has said that he would, I guess, weaken it by giving parts of Ukraine to Putin and then going and visiting Putin. So this is less about the issues. You could look at some of...
I don't know about that. I don't know. Well, I have to hear, him saying this. Maybe he's going to play the clip. Let me see.
What Ramaswamy is saying here, right? And remember, it's like pick and choose because the taking every position on every issue, it lets you just say, well, I liked what he said on this day, but not so much on that day. This is less about what we actually, there are elements of what Ramaswamy says where his most recent statement isn't crazy, and many of them that are crazy, okay? This is about the fact that he is doing an incredible job, and praise to him to the extent that it helps him.
He seems like he's going to go on a filibuster now. From what I saw, I don't see how he's incorrect. I don't see how his policy changed, right? Maybe he says he wants to talk to Putin. Maybe he's saying, he wants to do some other things. Except, or maybe he wants to see some way where you can still be successful in the conflict, but not force Russia into the hands of China or be beholden to the hands of China and strengthen that alliance. And I think Sean Hannity's right. There's an axis of evil: Iran, Russia, China. But I think Vivek instinctively is saying, well, why should we then strengthen that alliance between the three versus put ourselves in a position to weaken it? And I think, how do you get there is, I think, the issue. But I don't see this huge difference in what he's saying from before, what he's been quoted and saying, and what they're trying to make it seem like he's saying. So, hey, listen, I've been wrong before. I can be wrong again. I'm asking you guys, because you guys always say, look at the left-wing guy, look at the right-wing guy. Here they are. And to me, David Pakman and Sean Hannity seemingly are putting words in Vivek's mouth, and he's saying something that I think it's clear when you actually listen to what he said. It's like, okay, I understand that, and then they spin it to say he's not funding Israel. Like, no, that's not what he said. He wants to let Taiwan go after. No, that's not what he said. And if you listen to what he actually says and break it down, I think reasonably, and now after watching that interview, I think Hannity and Pakman see Vivek as a threat. Before I said I didn't think Hannity's motivation was helping Donald Trump, but I think Pakman and Hannity see Vivek as a threat. And I think they see him as a threat for some way. Maybe Hannity does see him as a threat to Trump. Because if this is all they have, then I don't really think they have anything. But let me know where I'm crazy in the comment section, because, as you guys know, I read the comments. But I think this is one of those instances where I think both the super left-wing liberal David Pakman and the super right-wing hardcore conservative Sean Hannity are purposely, it seems like, misleading the audience by trying to make it seem like Vivek is saying something that he's obviously not saying to me. But if you think he is saying it, or you think Vivek is being slimy, write in the comment section, because I'm really curious about this, because it's rare when you have both sides agreeing on something like this, and I think they're both wrong. My name is Nate the Lawyer. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, do all the great YouTube stuff. I'll see you next time. Peace.